Hi there, how are you? With the release of Skull onto consoles just around the corner, I figured it might be a good idea to prepare. So whether you're an all-new boneheaded player or a fossilized veteran catching me making mistakes, then there should be something here for you. Here's 10 tips to help you get started in Skull. Number 1, focus on making as much progress each run. Farming early for Dark Quartz isn't as effective as giving it a full go. Runs will progressively reward you with more quartz based on where you are and how far you made it. Some of you may want to farm Act 1 and simply reset after the boss fight and grind that way, but this simply isn't very efficient. For example, after beating the first boss, I had made 240 quartz from start to that point. After beating the game though, I had made about 7,000. It's definitely faster to try your best each time. On one hand, you'll get more quartz this way, and on the other hand, you'll also be getting more experience with the later stages of the game. It's a win-win. Number 2, save your Dark Quartz for the Witch traits. If you're at all familiar with roguelites where you can permanently upgrade your character with resources such as Undermine, Hades, Rogue Legacy, etc., then this will all make a lot of sense to you. There are a few ways to spend Dark Quartz, but in the beginning, the Witch is definitely the way to go. The bonuses she offers are just too good and too important if you really want to start pushing your runs. In particular, you really want to get Reassemble, which lets you come back to life with up to 60% of your maximum HP. Second lives are amazing. And you also want to get the Ancient Alchemy trait, as this is how you can make gold from items you destroy. Initially, you won't be able to earn any money from destroyed items, which is a very big sad. But once you get this trait, you'll be rolling in coin, and everybody knows the first rule to succeeding in any game is to dominate currency. Number 3, and this one's going to sound a bit weird given the previous tip, but don't be afraid to spend the 10 Dark Quartz for a secondary skull. Once you rescue the Fox NPC, he shows up in the castle to give you a free secondary skull before each run. However, if you speak to him a second time, you can pay him 10 Dark Quartz and he'll give you another skull. Both he and the Ogre NPC who gives items can give common or rare quality drops. So that means rare skulls as well. Luckily for us, 10 quartz is pretty cheap, and getting another skull to take with you might give you a good lead when it comes to bone fragments, or just be more fun when you get something that you really like to use. Number 4 is pretty much the same as the previous one, but this time for items. The Ogre NPC functions the same as the Fox, in that you can pay him 10 extra Dark Quartz for a second item. If you really want to, you can start doing this every run just so you have a little extra power. However, this offer really becomes powerful once you've fully upgraded the Alchemy Witch trait I mentioned earlier. Once you have it, this means that even if the Ogre gives you an item you don't really want to use, you can always destroy it and get gold, effectively starting your runs with a little extra pocket money to get you going. Number 5, Power Skulls can be very fun, however they can also be pretty difficult to use due to the fact most of them have a unique dash. They have a tackle that does damage to enemies that they pass through, but only has a single usage before the dash cooldown begins. This is different to almost every other type of skull, which have at the very least a double dash. This means that Power Skulls have to dodge very precisely and can't get away with dash mashing as much as their friends can. Less invincibility frames means more damage for you, so be careful out there with all those big heavy swinging power boys. Number 6, if a particular enemy is giving you a hard time, I recommend slowing down and studying them and learning how they fight. In my guide series, I go over each adventurer, elite, enemy, and boss for the first 3 acts and how to deal with them. But the principle is the same in that you want to isolate one of these guys, hypothetically let's say a big charger from Act 2, and just let them throw moves at you. Get used to the sounds they make or the animations they do whenever they do an attack. These are your tells. That way you'll learn that the big guys aim with their shoulder just before charging, and they raise their axe up into the air before doing a shockwave slam. This same logic goes for adventurers and bosses. Sometimes the best way to get better is to focus less on winning and more on learning what they can do so that you'll improve for the future. Number 7, if you're having trouble, keep an eye out for some of these specific defensive items that can really help push you further in runs. Warrior's Pauldrons activates a shield in front of you for about 5 seconds that blocks all incoming damage as long as you're facing the shield in front of you. Knight's Determination will reduce the amount of damage that you take when you're low on HP, very good for sustaining yourself when you're getting close to death. Dark Priest Robe is similar to to Knight's Determination in that it will activate an absorbing shield around you when you get low on HP. This will literally absorb and block a certain amount of damage until the shield is destroyed. Priest Staff is another really good one that also synergizes well with Knight's Determination and Dark Priest Robe. You see, Priest Staff gives you a heal over time that gradually regenerates life when you're low on HP, the exact same threshold of HP that Knight's Determination activates on. So if you have these two items together when you get low on life, Knight's Determination will reduce the damage you take and Priest Staff will start to heal you so that you can stay ahead of your opponent's damage. And last but not least, Wind Armor. This item gives you a chance that whenever you do a dash, it instantly resets the cooldown of your dash, so you're able to spam it more and more. So you guessed it, being able to mash your dash a whole bunch, getting lots and lots of invincibility frames, is very helpful for avoiding enemy attacks. Number 8, Rookie Mode. If you're unable to learn what certain enemies do because you simply die too quickly, whether it be to an elite or a boss, or maybe you've barely made it to Act 4 only to die in the first room and you haven't learned anything. Or maybe you're just struggling to learn the game's ins and outs and need some breathing room to get used to things. Rookie Mode can be accessed in the game's options, and when turned on, it reduces all the damage you take by 50%. It also shows you a little buff icon down below so you know when you've got it turned on or not. This will dramatically improve your chances of getting further and learning what enemies do. A nice bonus to this feature is that all it's really doing is letting you live longer. It doesn't nerf the enemies in any way or change how they spawn or attack, so you can use this setting as a way to practice whole areas, boss fights, adventure fights, whatever you need to do. Number 9, Doors. You'll see a lot of them in Skull. People often ask me which ones they should be taking, and the answer is kind of up to you. Besides the shop, adventurer, and boss rooms, you'll also find gold, item, and skull rooms. What I tend to do, because I make videos showcasing skulls themselves, is I take the green skull rooms as much as possible from the beginning of my runs to ensure I'm able to upgrade them and show off their new tricks. However, you can do this in any order you'd like. I also know players who prefer to take item rooms from the start until they've got a few nice ones and then balance themselves out afterwards. One thing I can say for sure is that in my experience, it's always worth taking an item room over a standard gold room. But only if you have the alchemy trait fully unlocked. This way, you might have a chance to get a unique or legendary item, which would otherwise cost you a lot more in the shop. But worst case scenario, it's either an average item or even a strong one that doesn't fit your build though. You can just sell it and you're still earning gold. No harm done. And finally, tip number 10, don't be afraid to use Little Skull himself. I think a lot of newer players fall under the assumption that the basic character that you begin the game with must be weak and that you want to replace him as soon as possible. This is actually not the case, as Little Skull has above average damage for the beginning of your runs. His basic attack is just as effective as anyone else's, and his head toss does a surprisingly high amount of magic damage. But it really gets nuts when you learn to throw his head and quickly pick it back up for faster skill usage. Weave in a few basic smacks as you're doing this, and he can really melt enemies. One drawback to the Littlest Bone though is currently he is the only character who cannot be upgraded by Arachne. At least as of making this video, this could change in the future. But don't count him out yet, because Skull has some very powerful and very fun builds with items that can lead him to victory. Without getting too deep into builds right now, what I will say is that the Mage's Necklace and Mana Bone items are his best friends. And just because I like you guys, here's bonus tip number 11. You didn't see it coming, no one saw it coming, here it is anyway, and that is to differentiate your damage types. So in Skull, there is physical and magical damage, and you can identify these by the color of the text on the items or the color of the damage when you're actually dealing it. Physical damage is always written in orange text, so therefore, whenever you're doing an attack and you see yellowish or orange numbers on the screen, this is telling you, hey, that's a physical hit. And you guessed it, if magic damage is written in blue and you do an attack and you see blue numbers show up on the screen, that's magic damage. And there you go, 10 quick tips plus 1 to help get you started in Skull. There's obviously a lot more depth with item builds and Skull synergies and whatnot, but hopefully this video has helped you out even just a little bit. If you want to see more Skull goodness, I've made a lot of Skull videos on my channel with pretty much every Skull and most of the good builds that you can come across, so if you're interested to learn more or just want to watch something for a bit of fun, I recommend it. If you have any questions at all, either about the tips I've shared today or anything else Skull related, please feel free to drop them in the comments below and I'll see what I can do to help. But with all of that said and done, I've got to get out of here. I hope you guys have enjoyed a few quick tips to help you get started on your journey in Skull the Hero Slayer, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one.